Greetings, classmates. Continuing my research on experimental history, I discovered this week that the term often applies to 17th and 18th century natural and experimental history, a philosophy applied to the study of natural history by Francis Bacon. Bacon's use of the term has no connection to the practice and study of doing history as we think of it today. The vast majority of the JSTOR results for experimental history refer to or relate to Bacon's natural and experimental history. A good reference for Bacon's use of the term is in the journal Early Science and Medicine in an article called Locke, Bacon, and Natural History, which is referring to John Locke and Francis Bacon. A couple of relevant results did come up. One is in the journal The History Teacher, a pedagogical trebuchet, a case study in experimental history and history pedagogy, which speaks directly to this week's assignment. From a pedagogical perspective, my interpretation of experimental history can, on the research end, help in producing improved tools and materials for experiential learning. On the subject of experiential learning, a Journal of Museum Education article, Connecting Theory and Practice Using Place-Based Learning in Teacher Professional Development, discusses how the physicality of location can enhance the learning experience. I can attest to this personally. I've had experience with this kind of learning experience, and I've written about that on my website on my About page. The URL for that is in the source list. Anyone who's worked with elementary school kids will likely have plenty of anecdotal experience with the potential of experiential learning. One of the reasons I became interested in experimental archaeology was my own experiences in experiential learning. This is how I learn best, through doing and following that up with teaching someone else. The process of learning through experimentation and then turning around and teaching what you've learned through papers and presentations is a cornerstone at the heart of amateur radio. This is an area where I have significant experience, and the process works. The idea behind experimental history is for the researcher to engage in experiential learning using experimentation along with traditional research to answer questions about the subject and to apply the physicality of the experimentation and research contextually and physically to generate the products of their research, which should include materials for teaching. My inclination is to produce products that can be applied in the public history sphere, but they're not limited to that environment. And while the physicality of experimental history can provide context to traditional outputs, that physicality should not be lost in its translation. Experimental history, as I interpret it, wants to bring the physicality to all environments, in the presentation, in the museum, and in the classroom. Thank you very much for your time.